No place like the Qube. Hey, I'm Adell.
And I'm Anna.
And we are AD Productions. Get ready to nod your head and laugh out loud as we bring an unfiltered perspective to Black life in predominantly white spaces. So, welcome to the Head Nod, Season 1, Black Life at a PWI. A haiku. Ivory landscapes, melanin in vibrant grace, Black blooms strong and proud.
Dum 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 dum. This message was brought to you by our favorite copywriter known as ChatGPT.
Hey, and welcome to the Head Nod.
Boom, boom, boom.
I love that we've run with that at this point. Like,
I mean, it's just co-opted the whole song.
Took the whole thing. I'll never look at Dreamgirls the same again. Anyway, welcome to the Head Nod. We are joined today with a special guest, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. So we're joined with Dr. Melvin Whitehead. He is an assistant professor at Binghamton University. His research explores the legacies of racism in U.S. higher education. So you get why we got him here today with us, with a focus on whiteness and anti-blackness and how they are reproduced on college campuses. His current research explores how white college students construct their understandings about race and its connections to the marginalizing experiences of Black students at historically white institutions. So first, welcome, Dr. Melvin. Can I call you Doc?
Sure, yeah. Doc.
Yes. You got to. When that's in front of the name, we got to put some respect on it because that's a lot of schooling, which we'll get to.
You know what I'm saying? Earn that doctor.
Earn
okay.
that, okay? So you're Doc. You're Doc.
It took me a while to own being called doctor after I got the PhD, and now I'm just leaning into it. Yeah, Doc.
Yes. Okay. So with that, with each guest, we asked them to give their school names, for you to be names, plural, and the call out. What's your school call out?
So I am an alum of 3 institutions. I got my bachelor's at Towson University, my master's at University of Michigan, and University of Georgia is where I got my doctorate. And our call out was, go dogs, sick 'em, woo, 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 woo.
Oh, snap.
That was probably the best one we've had so far, I would say.
Hands down. Sick 'em. Woo, woo. I love it.
I wasn't ready for the sick 'em. I mean, I'm here for it.
It got aggressive.
And I have to
I love it.
I have to drop this in. Being an alum of UGA, we are the winners of the last 2 football championships. Football is very serious at UGA, and we've won the last 2 years, so go dogs.
Not mad at it. I get it.
Facts.
I get it.
And I think do y'all spell dogs DAWGS?
Yep, sure
It's
do.
not.
That's even sweeter. I'm here for it.
There's no O. There's no O in
no O.
dogs. Yes, dogs.
That's right. I love it.
I love it for sure. So we always ask, why a PWI? And again, plurals, I guess, for you. Why PWIs?
Why did I go there? So HBCUs weren't really talked about when I was in high school. I didn't really know that they were a thing. And so I didn't even learn about HBCUs until after I was an undergrad student, because I went to school down the street from Morgan State. But I never, I just assumed that PWIs were the only types of institutions we could attend. As far as my graduate degrees, I just went to schools that had the programs I was looking for and could give me a full ride or full funding, which I know is hard at HBCU since the funding is different. And yeah, so I don't know. I never really thought about anything but PWIs just because they did not have the programs I was looking for when I was applying for grad programs.
Yeah. And then how was that undergrad experience? Right? So you walk on campus and you're like, ta-da.
Not ta-da.
There was no ta-da for me.
No
There was
ta-da.
no ta-da. I did not like. In fact, of the 3 college experiences I had, my undergrad one was the roughest for me. I grew up in a predominantly Black area. PG County, which is right outside of DC in Maryland, is where I grew up. And you know PG County, Adell?
I live in Maryland. I'm from DC.
What?
Yes. Yes.
No.
Yes. So I know exactly. Yep.
Okay. So you know PG County. So I went
Exactly.
from there to a PWI where I was one of only 2 Black people in the marching band my first year. I was a music major as an undergrad. And it was just a very white department. And I was just like, what is this? Coming from PG County to this white ass. Am I allowed to curse?
Yes. Do your thing, Doc. Go ahead, Doc. You earned it. You earned all of it.
All the 4-letter words. All the 4-letter words are yours.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That costs a little. Yeah, this white ass institution. And so it was very hard to go from not being like a minority to like feeling like a minority in this campus context. So it was hard.
Yeah. So you said you were like in band. So what were some of those experiences? Like what? Super white, but like what was that? Was it some things you went through?
So I went to a high school that had a very robust music program. We had 5 concert bands, a marching band, jazz band, Dixieland band. We had 3 orchestras, like 7 choirs. And then at it's a college institution, there was only like 1 concert band, 1 marching band, 1 orchestra, and a very white program. And also the curriculum was hella white. Like I remember being in my music history class and we're just learning about European music and saying something like that. I'm like, how come and I said it in class. I was like, why are we just learning about Western Europe? And then the professor was like, well, Spain is like, and I'm like, that's in Europe. Like he was talking about, so we learn about Spanish music. I'm like, Spain is European. Like,
thought he was really doing something.
I was doing something. Oh, and I was just like, and so I would bump heads like that and with my professors sometimes. And it was just really frustrating. And I was the only Black and queer trombone player because we had master classes. They were all white. They were all men and they were all straight. And it just felt like, just a fish out of water. And super self-conscious too. Like I compared myself a lot to my white peers and felt like I was never enough. It was just really hard.
Where did you find community? So I thought about majoring in music. My mom wanted me to, but I was like, there's just no way I could do music at this PWI because it's so demanding. There's so many hours that you have to be in that space. And I was just like, I can't do it. So where did you find community on campus, Melvin?
Off campus.
Outside.
Yes. Yeah. Off campus for sure. So one of the things I'll say is my first year in college, I joined like an anti-war group. So I started college in 2001. 9/11 happened, and then the Iraq War happened a couple years after that. And so I sort of joined some of the lefty organizations and started dating this woman who lived in Baltimore. And so I moved in with her. I'm trans, so I was a lesbian at the time. That's important context. I did the lesbian thing where we moved in with each other after like dating for just.
Oh, you U-hauled it? You U-hauled it? Very
in
good,
Baltimore.
Melvin.
I would just put out in Baltimore. That's all I'm saying.
Let's lean into that.
Let's lean into
U-Haul.
that. Okay.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I was the stereotype. And then through her, connected to like the Baltimore lefty scene and hang out with a bunch of folks off campus. Living off campus really changed my life in Baltimore. So yeah, that helped.
Yeah. So I'm sure that was a really dope experience, like all in itself.
Yeah.
Wow. No, that's super cool.
So what did you do on campus? How did you survive 4 years?
That's what I was going to say. What happened?
So it took me 6 years actually to finish my undergraduate degree. So I was there for actually six and a half years. And what did I do to survive? I
hang out in Baltimore.
I hang out in Baltimore, went to the clubs. I also went to DC a lot because I also had developed these friends who lived, like these lesbians who lived in DC. friends with them. So I was in the DC streets a lot, and I was taking my studies seriously too. So, what else did I do? Oh, I definitely had to. I did a lot of. I worked lots of jobs. So I had 3 jobs when I was in college. So I was definitely working a lot too. I worked in the library on campus, and I think that was actually one of my saving graces as a college student because I felt like I belonged in the library, and so I really felt my calling. My master's degree is in library science, so I went on to like pursue that. But yeah, I actually found a sense of purpose through my work at the library, even winning the Student Employee of the Year award one year because of
Okay.
my
Okay.
awesome work that I do at the
Okay.
library. Yes.
Okay. It's like if you're gonna do it, do it. You
I
just
mean, go
earning
all in.
all the things, okay? Nothing there.
And the other thing I will say is that before I finished my college degree, I got a full-time job at Howard. And so I did work at an HBCU for a while. And I worked at their law library. And I had mentors there who were really helpful in shaping my development, encouraged me to pursue library science as a graduate degree. So that was really cool. Howard helped me too.
Y'all say, what was those experiences like? The parallels between going to the PWI and then going on to work at Howard. What are some of the common things or not so common things you saw between the 2 schools?
So that was, I'm embarrassed to admit, I didn't know that Divine Nine orgs were a thing until I started working at Howard. I didn't know anything about
And that's a place to get exposed to it
Listen,
because
I learned about
that culture is deep at Howard.
yes, the D9s. I learned about that, and I was like, man. And that's when I started thinking. I was like, man, like, what would my life have been like if I had gone to an HBC, if I had gone to Howard, if I had joined like a Black Greek organization? Like, how would my life have been different? I thought about that a lot when I was working at Howard, but I saw like just the space, just like Black students. I worked at the law school library, and so like I saw Black law students really feeling comfortable and just like being themselves, unapologetically. And I was like, wow, I've never seen like a majority Black campus before, and how that shows up and how students interact with each other on campus. It looked beautiful, and I felt kind of like I was a staff there, and I was like kind of like wanting to be a student there. Yeah.
You're like, wait, I can kick it.
Right,
I can kick it
exactly.
with y'all
Like,
too.
yeah, like, that's exactly
But
what it
like,
was.
what's the timeline here? Because then you went on to your graduate programs. What was the decision kind of based in there on
So
where to go?
my director, the director at the Howard Law Library at the time, was a Black woman, and she encouraged me to go to University of Michigan's program. She encouraged me to explore like some programs, and I applied to 4, and based on her recommendation and my direct supervisor. So they really influenced what schools I applied to for my library degree, my master's degree. And I don't think
Got it.
any HBCUs had library science programs. So yeah, I was like,
Okay. So it's like based around what you were trying to major in. I get
yeah.
that. Or take your studies too. I get that for sure.
So tell me, Melvin. Okay, so we know the undergrad experience was not ideal,
Trash.
and we are thankful for Baltimore and DC. And then you went to University of Michigan.
Yeah.
So what was that transition like? What was the difference between your undergrad PWI and the University of Michigan?
Well, I think part of the differences were definitely tied to me developmentally, because when I started college, I was 18. When I went to University of Michigan, I was 24, I think. And so I was just at a different place developmentally. And also, that was at the very beginning of understanding myself as a trans person. In fact, I came out as trans like a month after I came to Michigan. And so I saw the campus environment differently. Because I've gone to PWI, had that experience under my belt, and so the transition to Michigan wasn't as stark for me as it was going from high school to Towson. You know what I mean? And I needed certain supports from Michigan that I didn't necessarily need at Towson because I was coming to think of myself as trans. And so I interact a lot more with the LGBT office, and seeking out trans folks. And so University of Michigan, I will always give full credit. The most amazing, easygoing experience I had transitioning. University of Michigan was so awesome to me. And I consider it a huge blessing that I was at Michigan when I realized I was trans, because I think it could have been much more rough and difficult if I was at any other institution. They had so much work that they've done around trans stuff there already, in terms of the practitioners, the healthcare providers, faculty switched pronouns with me, like without any issues. It was great.
I love that. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
You just never know especially now. I mean, you're talking about what was it, 2006, 2008? Yeah. Goodness. I mean, you just don't know what to expect during that. And so to hear that, that's really dope.
Community. Yeah, it really feels like the biggest difference between the two schools was finding your community and like that safe space that you can now thrive in, versus there where you're trying to figure yourself out and figure community. It didn't really work out as well. So it's really dope that you were able to kind of move into this new space and really discover yourself, but also have a safe space to do that. I love that.
It was really facilitated by the first person I met at Michigan. This is God's intervention, I'm convinced. The very first person I met was a transgender guy in my program.
What?
In my program. And he had gone to Michigan as an undergrad, so he knew all the resources to share with me. And so I was like, how?
Library science.
Yeah. Right. And he was a person of color. Right?
What?
So, yes.
That's dope.
I'm like a trans person of color in my library science program who also went to Michigan as an undergrad, so knew the ins and outs.
Yeah, that's the divine.
Yeah.
That is not.
Yeah.
Y'all the only two in the whole country. Right. Both at University of Michigan. Oh, that's dope.
Yeah.
That's dope. Okay. So at University of Michigan, you've connected with the LGBTQ office, you're transitioning. Oftentimes, when you're in your grad program, you're very disconnected from campus, but it sounds like you were very connected.
More. It's like the opposite of what we're used to hearing, for sure.
Yes. And so being someone who studies higher ed now, I see my experience as very unconventional, because typically people come into student affairs, higher ed, because they had these really amazing undergrad experiences where they were super connected with the environment and took all these roles. That was not my experience. And I did more of that when I was a master's student at the University of Michigan. I got involved with their Speakers Bureau, which is like a panel where they train you to tell your coming out stories in these like community contexts as an educational thing. I volunteered for their some sort of leadership advisory council where you met with administrators to talk about policies affecting LGBT students. And so I did those leadership things that usually undergrads are doing, but I took advantage of as a master's student. Absolutely.
No,
I love that.
Awesome. Yeah, that's beautiful.
I think that's pretty dope. So did you connect with like the LGBTQ community where is University of Michigan?
Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Ann Arbor. Yeah, the Wolverines.
Wolverines. There you go. Yes. I don't know that we have a call other than Go Blue, but yes, we're the Wolverines. I connected with the local trans community in Ann Arbor. At the time, it was mostly white, but I did befriend two trans folks of color, including a guy who's now currently my best friend. We actually transitioned around the same time, and he's still my best. He still lives in Ann Arbor, in the Ann Arbor area. But we met actually, funny enough, he had checked out, you remember Noah's Ark, that TV show?
Yes.
Yes.
So the LGBT office had like a little library of like gay books and videos. And someone kept like checking it out before I could like check it out myself. And I really wanted to watch it. So I checked out, I went to the queer office and I was like, who has it checked out right now? Because I went to contact them so that when they were done with it, they could give it directly to me. So that person's actually, the person is my best friend now. That's how we met. So he had checked it out. And I was like, hey, I know that you have this checked out, Noah's Ark. Can I just meet you when you're done with it? And I can get it directly from you. Anyway, that's how we met, through Noah's Ark.
That's so great.
You said, I am not
That is
missing
so
it this
great.
time. I
Right.
am not missing this opportunity
That's
to
right.
get this
And you are not about to extend your reservation.
Exactly.
at all.
Exactly.
That's so funny. So Noah's Ark is one of my wife's favorite shows.
Oh my
And
gosh.
when we moved, we had it on VHS. And when we moved, I left my television in my parents' garage. And she was like, we got to our new spot. And she was like, where is Noah's Ark? I was like, oh, snap. I think it's in the TV.
Now it got
like-
left in the TV. Oh no.
It was in the TV. It was in the TV. She's like, we are going back right. We are
Right
have
now.
to go get
right now.
I have
Yeah.
I was
never
in-
met anyone who loves Noah's Ark that much.
No, I love it. Me and my friends binged it multiple
Yes.
times. Like, oh gosh, the wedding. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, the
my
movie
gosh.
with the wedding. Yes.
Yeah, see,
love the
yeah, we
movie.
were all in. We were devastated when it stopped coming
I
on.
know.
But yeah, so take us to then going from Michigan. Where did you go after that, and what was that journey like for you?
So after I graduate Michigan, I moved to the Chicago area, which is when I met Anna a very long time ago. And I lived there in the Chicago area for 5 years before I went to my PhD program at the University of Georgia. And University of Georgia is very interesting. The South is very interesting. But one of the cool things about my program at University of Georgia, it was their College Student Affairs admin program. It was so Black, which is very unique and different from many PhD programs. They're very white. You know, you're talking about Black students, maybe one of just maybe a couple or just one. But when I went to their interview days, the visiting days, one of the things that sold me on this particular program, because I got accepted to like 4 programs, the number of Black students there, and they were all like kicking it. It seemed like a really community-based feel for the program, like not very competitive. Like people were cool with each other, and it was Black. And I was like, oh wow, this is the program for me. And I'm glad I decided to go to the University of Georgia because it was an amazing experience for me.
Tell me about it. Tell us about it. I want to hear more. What made UGA so different than the other two?
A couple of things to set the context. Even though my family is from the South, I've never personally lived in the Deep South until I went to the University of Georgia. And culturally, it's different from the North and Midwest, which is where I have spent my life previously. And one of the things I noticed that was different was it's a lot less racially diverse than the DC area, which is where I grew up. It's very Black and white, and very few folks of other sort of racial and ethnic groups in that area. And then the other thing I'll say too is that politically it's very conservative. And you know, even though Atlanta and Athens, Georgia, which is where UGA is, are kind of liberal pockets, the higher ed context is very much shaped by the state political climate, which is very conservative. And so even though I'm someone who teaches and researches stuff related to social justice, at UGA, when I was teaching, I learned that I had to be careful about certain things and phrase things in particular ways because of pushback from folks who are connected to funding for the USG schools.
The money.
Yeah. But I will say that that's part of the differences that I saw at University of Georgia. But the other thing I'll say in terms of my particular program, I learned so much about myself as a doc student. I tell people this all the time. My transition period as a doctoral student, I learned much more about myself compared to my gender transition. And I think that says a lot. My gender transition was a very transformative experience, but I felt that my experience as a PhD student taught me way more about myself, the ways that I've been socialized in terms of my race, my class privilege, which I hadn't thought about a lot before going to my doc program, ability, like all the identities, just very reflective experience. And the people in that program, the community, you learn in community, right? And so my colleagues taught me, through our conversations, prompted me to reflect on a lot of things. So I really enjoyed that.
What are some of the things you felt like you definitely learned? Because like you said, DC was definitely chocolate city then, and then kind of became a mixed bag. And then going from that to the extreme opposite, what were some of the key takeaways even now that formulates how you've moved since then?
So since you know DC, you might sort of understand PG County's context, but for the listeners, I will offer this. PG County is a very affluent, majority Black county, one of the most affluent majority Black counties in the country. And so, to answer your question, I never really reflected on how I've internalized middle class values as a Black person and how that impacts how I interact with others and some of the assumptions that I make. One of the things that I learned, this is a particular experience I had a friend, a good friend in my program, Black woman who grew up poor. And we were living together my last year in my doc program in a house. So she was a roommate and also a good friend. And we were talking about healthcare. And during the pandemic, I finished my PhD March 2020, so it was the very beginning of the pandemic. And I was like frustrated that a lot of Black folks were mistrusting of medical care professionals in terms of going to medical care and getting treatment and things like that. And my friend said to me, she's like, well, do you think that might be related to you not having to think about medical access growing up and you just sort of take for granted? And she wasn't that direct with it. She was a lot more sort of gentle with the phrasing. But but the conversation prompted me to think about, wow, like I've always had access to doctors and dentists. I've always sort of trusted them. I grew up in a suburban environment, right? So I didn't grow up in a rural area where access was more difficult. To get to doctors. I've never had a reason to mistrust them. And I was like, okay, I can see how my class identity might play a role in how I think about trusting medical care professionals. But that's a very specific example, but the kind of learning about myself that took place throughout my program and things like that. And also how my parents who grew up in the South during Jim Crow raised me in a particular way. And it wasn't until I was a doc student I realized, like, oh, some of the things that my parents did were based on their experiences under Jim Crow that I really don't need to adopt for my own anymore. And I can see how some of this might be problematic. Yeah.
So much of it was done out of safety.
Yes.
And respectability politics was born out of safety.
Yep.
Yeah.
And survival. And so much of that we don't need anymore. Yeah, that's real. And then before we get into the segments, one more question. Being Black and queer in all three of these spaces, I mean, it's quite a unique experience. I personally found just like the LGBTQ, I think ours was called the Rainbow Union at Drake. I mean, it was just as white as it gets. It just does not get any whiter than that type of a space. How did you navigate that? You was just in the streets. You was outside of school.
I will say
he was in Baltimore. Like, that's what it is.
I was having lots of sex.
Valid. I'm not even mad.
Noted.
I'm not even mad.
Particularly my time at the University of Michigan. But what I say to that is I think I'm thinking about this in terms of development again, because that's one of the things I study. There's different identities took on different levels of importance to me at different points in my life. So when I was at University of Michigan, my gender identity took on the importance because I was transitioning. I was thinking about trans identity, trans stuff, connecting with trans people. When I was at University of Georgia, my racial identity felt more salient. And so I was more drawn to connecting with Black folks, including Black cis het folks, which I've never really enjoyed hanging out with. But I found no shade to any Black cis het listeners. It's just, you know. But when I was at University of Georgia, I felt that, okay, it's harder for me to access trans community here. And so I think that also necessitated me sort of like me expanding how I think about community. And so, yeah, there are Black cis het folks I connected with during my time at Georgia who were mad cool, and some of my closest friends now. And so I think that was really helpful in terms of like kicking with Black folks at UGA.
It's layers to it. It's layers to the communities that you find in these different schools.
The other thing I was going to add, I did find a Black trans masculine group in Atlanta. And so even though it's a 90-minute drive from University of Georgia to Atlanta, I did do that from time to time to kick it with Black trans folks. And that was also really helpful.
I think it just highlights how we're able to find and understand that community is not just singular. It's layers to it. It's multiple communities that you can find or hope to find in your higher education. How did you get into the space of what you focused on with whiteness and anti-blackness? At what level of schooling did you find that you needed to kind of dive deeper into that?
So that was in part based on, well, I'll say two things. One, when I was a young person, I was really fascinated by white racism, white racists. It just seemed like it just blew my mind how how white people think about people of color and how anyone could be racist. As a young person, I didn't quite understand it, and so I would pore over. I can't believe I'm telling y'all this.
Tell us.
I don't know if y'all familiar with Stormfront? It is a white supremacist like message board. And it goes back to like the late 90s, early aughts. But as a high school student / young college age person, I remember poring over those message boards and trying to figure out like, why are these white racists racist? And if I could just figure out how they're thinking about race, maybe I can fix it somehow. That's my like sort of naive like young person like mentality. Fast forward to 2016, fall of 2016 which is why I started my doc program. It's the presidential election cycle. We see this uptick in documented racist shit happening across the country, including college campuses. And I remember really feeling frustrated about how many colleges were responding. And so that prompted me to study this as a career. Because when I started my doc program, I initially was studying queer and trans community college students. But then as I progressed in my doc program and saw what was happening on college campuses, I shifted my focus to focus on whiteness, anti-blackness in higher ed. And I think part of that too is born from as a young person, my curiosity about how white people think about race and why they think about it the way that they do.
In your research, what was like that one thing that surprised you the most in your findings? Was there one thing that stood out and you were like, I didn't expect to see that?
But there it is.
Ooh, oh, that's such a great question. One of the, I don't know that it surprised me, but it's something that I did not expect. I guess I'm thinking about it differently. Because it makes sense the more I think about it, but it was unexpected, is the ways that the white college students in my research studies think they're having these woke-ass conversations about race, but they really weren't, and they're actually reproducing whiteness. And I'll sort of say that one of the studies that I did recently was looking at white people's efforts to come get their people, and through conversations about race with other white folks in their networks. And the conversations that they described having and thought they were having were not the conversations that they were actually having. And so I'm like, wow, that's unexpected, but also not surprising if I were to think about whiteness. You know, whiteness is just going to white, you know?
White people going white people. Yes. Have you ever had any interactions with like white folk who have maybe checked out some of your research and had some words or like interactions with them and their experience of kind of observing what you've created or researched?
So my research with white students is indirect. So I actually don't have direct interactions with the white students that I'm researching because I am Black, and I don't expect them to be honest with me and forthcoming with me. So I actually have not had direct interactions with any of my research participants. I collect my data through, they do diaries, online diaries. And the times that we've done interviews, I have a white researcher, co-researcher do the interviews and debrief with me after every one. But I minimize my direct contact.
Not mad at that. And you got the inside scoop, Doc. I got some questions, but we'll ask offline. We'll ask that another. Because those diary entries,
them diaries. I don't know. I don't know if I want to read them.
Listen, I will say I was, when I was doing my dissertation analysis and reading these diary entries, I would have visceral reactions sometimes to what I was reading in the entries, particularly because I went to Ghana at the end of 2019, right when I was in the middle of my analysis. And I noticed when I got back from Ghana, is when I started having the visceral reactions. Before I went to Ghana, I was just kind of like, blank slate, numb, whatever. But I went to Ghana and I went to the slave dungeons and I went to like, all that shit, right? And I came back and I was like, these fucking students. Like,
you like, goddamn whiteness.
Goddamn whiteness.
Yeah.
But it also helped me think about like the importance of my work. And it's really, one of the things, here's what it is surprising. Here's what surprised me. Whiteness also fucks up white people. That's one of the things that I have taken away from my research, seeing the ways that they're fucked up and they don't even realize it. Whiteness be fucking them up. It teaches them to separate themselves from their own humanity, oftentimes. And I think that is a violence on the self in a spiritual sense. And it's not really, they're not really thinking about it like that. And it's really kind of sad in a sense. But I've come to see my work and the importance of it. Even when I'm feeling angry and have these visceral reactions, I'm like, we need to engage the spirit and the emotions when we're talking about race and when white people are engaging with it. Because one of the problems I saw is they treat it as an intellectual thing. And it's not just an intellectual head analytical exercise. Race has very real implications for people of color's lives and also their lives, but they don't think about it that way.
Privilege keeps them from having to, right?
Yeah.
Oh, Melvin, Dr. Melvin. That's what I'm talking about. We need this research in our life. How do you see your research being effective? How do you tell the story of your research? I find, academia can also be a barrier because it's in the halls of these places that many people do not have access to, right? And so how do you make your research a reality and put it into practice, the things that you've learned in hopes of actually young Melvin changing society and like changing these white races out here on whatever storm chasing cloud thing you was trolling?
Oh my gosh. Thank you for that question, Anna. I think one of the things that frustrates me about being an academic is that there's often this navel gazing, like we're just staying in the ivory tower and not really impacting real people with that work. And so I don't want to be that kind of academic. I will say one of the things that I do to tell the story of my research, whenever I publish, I don't publish a traditional like findings kind of way. Like I create stories and I center Black people's perspectives and how I talk about what I'm finding in my research. And so in my dissertation, for example, I created scenes with characters, and for the prologues, I use Black participants' accounts about their campus experiences and have the reader read the scene through that lens of the Black students, right? When I'm teaching, I create case studies based on my research and I'm teaching students who want to support college students, who want to be student affairs professionals. And so I talk about the importance of engaging, think about your privileged identities and how that might be playing a role in how you're interacting with students from various backgrounds, right? And so with my research, one of the things that I do is, I create case studies, I create narratives, I create stories, and also use that as a launching pad for students to think about their own experiences. Like, what is this story telling you about you? I do workshops on anti-blackness and whiteness. And one of the things that I want to do, and I need to get funding for this because I know that I will not be able to do this given my own skill sets and lack thereof, but I want to engage TikTok as a learning platform for my research. And I follow lots of TikTok creators, and I see interesting things that they do, some folks do with Black history, for example, racism, college campuses. And so I want to use that as a platform, but I need to hire someone to do this with me because I don't have the personality or the skill set for TikTok. I just consume it. But I want to reach white college students, particularly with my research, because they're the audience that I'm trying to shift in my work. I'm continuing to think about ways I can do that beyond the ivory tower. But right now it's primarily through my teaching and training people who are going to be tomorrow's higher ed professionals.
Love it. I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's really dope.
That really is.
All right. Well, segments.
I think we need to move to our segments.
Party on at this PWI.
So coming from the space you were coming from, with, like you said, Black culture and everything, what white music or alternative or other music did you get exposed to when you first got to the campus? Is there a song that comes directly to mind? I feel like it does because of how you lead all the way back. I feel like something's there.
Melvin should have a whole discography. Being in band, your song should be next level.
Because that band instructor was like, one band, one sound. It was not going to be the sound you
want. Oh my gosh. So this is really going back through the Rolodex of my brain. Because I feel like as a grad student, nothing comes to mind. But I feel like when I was an undergrad at Towson, I think I also just blocked out so much of that experience. I will say this at Michigan. I think I was at Michigan. Yeah, Michigan when I was exposed to this song. This was a song that is by a Black artist, but it was very popular amongst white people. I will say that, and I hated it. Okay, I don't I don't know. Hey y'all.
Oh, Outkast.
So Andre 3000.
Yeah,
it was like catnip for white women. That song. So I was also a DJ when I was at the University of Michigan, and I fucking hate that song. But it was like catnip for white women. That song.
Sorry.
Like,
I love that expression, catnip for white women.
I'm dead. Okay, this is the moment Anna
You know what?
I'm just saying.
I didn't expect you to say that though. I thought you were going to say, because that's a conversation in itself too, Anna. Like popular Black artists amongst like white folk. Because for me, it was like 50 Cent. Like I couldn't get away from 50 Cent in certain. With the white guys, like they love 50 Cent. Like the Go Shawty, It's Your Birthday. It was mostly white guys that was blasting that. It wasn't us. It was somebody else. It was them. It was them.
That should be a whole sub segment, right?
Seriously.
Oh my God. There's so much of that.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
But catnip.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yo,
yeah.
That's got to go in the promo.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know.
Sorry.
I hated that song and people would request it, and I played it because people wanted it and they loved it. They went ape shit, okay? Like, but I'm just like, not this fucking song again. I like Outkast. They did that. Was that Black Eyed Peas or Outkast? I couldn't remember.
That was Outkast. That's Andre 3000.
That was Outkast.
Yeah. I know the exact album. That's the Speaker Box Love Below one. Yeah, that's yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there like a top like 3 songs that they requested in your time as a DJ? Are there like a top 3 that comes to mind?
Yes. The other one was Don't Stop Believing. Don't.
Yeah.
Journey.
Yeah, Journey. Yeah, I had a lot of Journey in my experience.
Oh God. Oh, these are I'm literally having flashbacks right now, y'all.
Come back, Melvin. Come back. You don't have to go back anymore.
I don't want to think about any more songs. Just those 2.
I'll take it.
I'm telling you.
Oh,
hilarious. Gosh. It's funny because I was a DJ too in grad school. DJ Rain on the mic.
What? Why am I just hearing this? What is this?
DJ Rain. And I got so sick and tired of playing Kanye West. I mean,
oh no.
I could not stand
Gold Digger?
College Dropout. Huh?
This was before Gold Digger.
Oh yeah, this was before Gold Digger, but that College Dropout album, I just could not play. I was so sick of it, and they wanted to hear it every night. Every night I played. Man, what a time. What a time.
Like,
DJ Rain.
What are you jamming to on that? Okay. It's a good album, but not to be like in the club. Okay.
Yeah, it is a good album. But I can't imagine having to play that all the time.
All the time.
Oh man. It was a mood.
Oh.
It was a mood.
There's no place like home. There's no place like home. There's no place like home.
But Melvin, I know you probably got a story or 2, but this segment is called like click your heels 3 times. Like, was that moment where you were like, I got to get out of here. I want to go home. I can't take it no more. Did you have one of those moments? I feel like you did, especially in undergrad.
I'm about to say,
You
go
already
right back
know.
to Towson.
You already
Let's
know.
go back to Baltimore.
You already know this is
Let's just
Towson's
go
story.
right back to Towson.
You already know this is Towson's story. So I mentioned I was butting heads with my music professors about the whiteness of the curriculum. And in this same music history class, I had a white professor. I won't reveal his name, but he is retired now. I have confirmed. And it's
You
the
check.
beginning. I did. It was the beginning of class one day, and this was like I think this might have been also the semester that I lost my father as well. So that gives you some context for my state of being. And it was the beginning of class, and he was talking about the midterm that was coming up. And I raised my hand and I asked him, like, what kinds of topics like could we expect on the midterm, so I know like what things to study, right? And he blew up. I'm talking red in the face, yelling at me. That's a stupid question. How dare you ask that question? Like he laid into me in a way that I've never seen ever in all my years of higher ed. I left in tears. I've never walked out of a class before or since, but I could not. And it was at that moment that I felt like just the weight of being like just one of a few Black students in that program, my frustration with the curriculum, particularly this guy, and just feeling like I didn't belong, the competitiveness of a music program. We were talking about that, Anna, and just all the white students in it, and I'm not good enough. Like all that came weighing down on me. And that was definitely a 3 clicks heels, wanted to go back home moment.
Oh,
I feel that. I'm glad you know he's retired. Good to know.
Yeah. Good. Ugh.
Sit down somewhere.
Sit down.
Sit your ass down.
Yeah, and then I found out later, I can't remember if it was another student who told me this or someone else, but someone was like, yeah, he was going through a divorce at that point, and he was just like, just having a rough time. Not that excuses what he did to me, but like it provided me context with his state of mind, about that.
I mean, he could have just bypassed the final for everyone and went and handled his affairs, and
I
we all would have been
mean,
good. Like,
no.
just saying. Like,
Yeah.
There were other options.
there were other options. We didn't have to go this one way. There were other options.
And I think about that, I'm an educator now, and I think about like my own pedagogy and how much I value community and connection and relationality in my teaching. And when you tell a student that that's a stupid question, they're going to want to shut down and they're not going to feel comfortable engaging in the class, right? That's nothing that I would ever tell a student, right? And that's the opposite, of what you should tell a student. So I just think about that now as my years as an educator. And yeah.
Yeah, well, that's beautiful. It made you a better educator in the long run, but still, he needs to go sit his ass down.
I have a question. How did you know?
How did you know?
So our next segment is How Did You Know? So it's the opposite of the last one. Was there that beautiful moment where you just knew, like, I can do this, PWI life. This is okay for me. This is good.
Definitely did not have that at Towson. And I don't want to badmouth Towson. Let me just can I just give this caveat real quick. I had a bad experience at Towson, and I don't want this to reflect Towson's institution. It's a fine school. I didn't have the best experience there. Okay.
This message was brought to you by Dr. Melvin Whitehead.
Towson sucked, but it's okay. But Baltimore was cool. That's
Yes. Baltimore was mad cool. Yeah, maybe I should have gone to Morgan. But yeah, so I will say the beautiful moment for me, I will use my experience at University of Georgia. I think the moment for me was, there are so many. I'm just trying to pick one. I was very self-conscious my first year of my doc program, as are many doc students, especially folks of color and from marginalized backgrounds. I had an experience in my diversity and inclusion class, which was the first class I took in my doc program. And it was taught by a white woman who is queer, cisgender. And there was a piece of feedback that she gave to me on one of my assignments. And basically, the feedback was about my writing and how good of a writer she thought I was, and how she appreciated how I think about the concepts in class. And she gave me a lot of encouragement. And I saw had a lot of brilliant Black folks in my program. And so I felt like even amongst these Black folks who we share the same racial ethnicity, that I was not enough. But her comment on my assignment helped me with my confidence in my program with my peers. Yeah.
Love it.
Aw,
Yeah.
yay.
Let's go. Encouraging
beautiful.
professors, you know.
Yes.
I love it. Melvin, Dr. Melvin Whitehead. Doc, thank you so much for coming on the show.
For sure.
Thank you for
thank you for
inviting
doing
me.
the Lord's work and observing white people, because we're all not built for it, okay? I'm not built for it. I'm not built. I'm not built for it. Thank you for making those sacrifices so the rest of us can understand white people.
You know, I find my niche, and I'm glad to contribute in the ways I can. Also, thank you for this podcast because, like I said before, I teach higher ed. I teach about colleges, and I want to assign some of these podcasts to my students. And so I want to
Yes.
assign more podcasts, because I don't want to assign readings all the time. Readings can be, just some people just like to listen to podcasts. And so I'm very thankful that this podcast is a thing. So thank you.
Yay. Yes. Assign them to the head nod. Yes. Give them the work.
Yes. Yes.
But yes, thanks for joining us. It's been great.
Right.
Thank you for tuning in to the Head Nod Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us on the Qube app and at DCP Official across social. Family, follow my sis Adell at I am Adell Coleman across all socials.
And follow the coolest to ever do it, DeShawn at DeShawn on all socials.
Listen wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really dig it, leave a rating and a review. Keep nodding your heads with us. Until next time, this is the Head Nod.